What is the Britzman Collection? It's named after Homer E. and Helen E. Britzman, and that was the name the collection had when it was at the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center. It got there because Homer Britzman bought Nancy Russell's house, Trails End, after her death in 1940. It was part of a consortium that split up the paintings, but Homer Britzman got the house and, in effect, its contents. What the contents were would be Nancy Russell's files. Everything Nancy Russell kept, and she was a pack rat. She kept most things. She kept everything from hotel receipts from their first visit to New York, to letters from Charlie's father, to correspondence related, most importantly, to business, personal correspondence, newspaper clippings. She used clipping services when Russell held his major exhibitions in major centers, photograph albums, Charlie's rough sketches for his paintings. You could name it, and she would keep it, fortunately. So I really think of the Britzman Collection as the Nancy Russell Estate Collection. And here's the key. Everything in it would be what would have been in Nancy's possession when she died, with this qualifier. After Homer Britzman died, the collection moved on to his widow, Helen. Helen later suffered dementia, and the one thing she was consistent on correctly was being highly suspicious of us Russell collectors and fanatics who wanted at the collection. Nobody was allowed real access to it. It had been used by Homer Britzman selectively, feeding documents to Raymond Adams for their first pioneering biography of Russell in 1948. But other than that, scholars and the public were denied access to the collection. So it was this great treasure trove that was inaccessible. I believe the fact that he knew of it but couldn't gain access to it was the reason the great Texas writer J. Frank Dobie, who'd been working on a Russell biography, abandoned the project in the mid-1950s. Because Helen was, in effect, in care with help around the house, we know the collection got depleted in the mid-50s. Trunk sales were held. Stuff was taken because, though highly suspicious of scholars and collectors, she, in fact, could not control, perhaps, the flowing out of parts of her collection. So if you look at the Britzman Collection today, you're aware of lacunae, you're aware of absences, where a file, for example, of Charlie Russell's dad's letters breaks off, and then there are no more letters, though he lives another 20 years. Nothing on the trip to England. We've talked about this, but just really nothing. Her draft manuscript of her biography, what she had managed to achieve, that was mentioned by Kirby, it's there in bits and pieces. Lots of stuff in the collection and lots of stuff not in it. The Montana Historical Society owns a few pieces that belong to the Russells. They should be part of the estate collection, but they flew out. And there are, in fact, pieces from it in a number of places. So it's the Nancy Russell Estate Collection with a few obvious holes in it. but it is the most important collection of documents and materials on Charlie Russell extant. It changed everything for Russell scholars when it became available for research. I always think of it as encountering the Britzman Collection was like that moment in The Wizard of Oz when black and white Kansas turns into Technicolor Oz. It changed everything because now you had the contemporary living voice of Nancy Russell as businesswoman and of the management from her perspective, obviously, of the career end of Charles M. Russell. Also photographs. When I was younger and did my first book of Russell letters, I was amazed by how few new or interesting photographs of Russell there were. There are tons of photographs of Russell, as Larry's book on Charlie Russell Photographing the Legend indicates. Many, many of those photographs reposing in the Britzman Collection. Now, I feel like a bit of a hypocrite standing here because I want to point out the collection now is in the Gilcrease Museum, the Gilcrease Museum and University of Tulsa, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was foursquare in the corner of the Montana Historical Society in getting that collection when it came on the market. Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center could no longer hold on to it, wished to sell it. Should have been here, I thought, where the Rankin collection was. Should have been in Great Falls, if not in Helena, because Montana was Russell's heartland. But today I can say I am hugely grateful that the collection belongs to a responsible museum like the Gilcrease Museum, which is doing lots with the collection to make it available for all of you who wish to research in it. It's a happy fate. The collection might have been dispersed, sold off item by item, but it is intact with the qualifier that I've already mentioned, that there are things that are missing. And I thought maybe this afternoon, because just briefly, the person who should be talking here in front of you is not me, it's Rick Stewart. Rick Stewart of the Amon Carter Museum, at that time he was its curator of Western art, was the person who was able to first make the Britzman Collection accessible to an extremely limited range of scholarship, 2 Amon Carter books. My book that I was working on, or about to work on, called Word Painter, the collection of Russell letters, and Rick's book on Russell's sculpture. They made an arrangement with the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center that in exchange for a fee and archivally preserving the estate papers, they would have it on premise for 2 years for researchers to consult it for these Amon Carter projects. They would indeed allow me full access, and I want to go ahead and just very quickly bring a couple of letters between Rick and myself to your attention in case you're interested in this story. Rick wrote me, and I apologize about my eyesight, but Rick wrote me on October 28th, 1987. He was trying to get me to do another collection of letters because I was unhappy with the first I'd done with Amon Carter, this funny little book called Paper Talk. I thought it was a condensed, third-rate version of what we had worked on together with this great goal of producing something definitive. He said, "I have not had the opportunity to meet you formally, but I've come to know you through your writings and the correspondence of yours that I have read here in the museum files. Rick then quickly and diplomatically took my side over paper talk, and then went on to say, "I am delighted that you have tentatively agreed to author and edit a new version." Well, I hadn't yet agreed. So I wrote Rick back April 7th, 1988. "I am warming more and more to a new edition of Paper Talk, since I will very much enjoy working with you and my other Eamon Carter friends. We have things to discuss. I am particularly anxious that the book stand as a substantial contribution to Russeliana this time out. The letters," I didn't know I could sound so pompous and stupid, but the letters are irresistible and will, of course, take care of themselves if we handle our end correctly. Rick, I wrote a kind of a précis of what this collection of Russell letters had to accomplish. Rick phoned me April 28th, 1988. He said that he was in touch with the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Museum, had talked on the phone to their director. They needed money. Gee, that's unusual for museums. I don't get that. Anyway, he said that their collection was in chaos, that the Russell collection didn't fit into what the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center really was all about. "It's great stuff," he said. Rick had spent 2 days in a vault with the door locked, and he said, unwilling to take a bathroom break, but desperately in need of one. At any rate, should Eamon Carter buy this collection? Rick asked. I wrote to Rick, or he wrote to me, I apologize, on February 23rd, 1989. When I was talking to David Wagner at Colorado Springs a few weeks ago, he mentioned you had contacted him about the Britzman material. I then realized I'd not brought you up to date on our negotiations. Believe it or not, we have been at it rather steadily with the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center since the Russell meetings last November. If nothing goes wrong, we may actually see the end of this in a month or so. Although I can't say for certain, it looks like we will be able to transfer the materials to Fort Worth for archival processing for a period of 2 years. This should enable you to do your research for the Russell projects, at least as far as the manuscript material goes. Well, I wrote Rick on March 7th, 1989. I, like the rest of the world that might be interested in getting at the Britzman Collection, am pinning all of my hopes on your good efforts. And then to him again on May 23rd, 89. As I begin to think more about Russell, I'm convinced that the Britzman Collection is the obvious starting point. I can worry about Oklahoma City, Great Falls, Helena, etc. after that. All right. Rick to me, May 30th, 1989. We are still not all the way home with the Britzman negotiations, and I will spare you the details. As it looks now, we will have possession of them by mid-July or so, but I wouldn't plan on getting into the materials until we've had a chance to do our own inventory. Then this, from the Director of Publications, October 23rd, 1989, at Eamon Carter. I do, however, have good news for you. Rick Stewart says that we will have the Homer Britzman papers, all but the illustrated letters themselves, from Colorado for you and to use here. They are coming to the museum for 2 years with complete permission to use them, and they have been inventoried and sleeved. By spring of 1990, we hope you can come to Fort Worth for this crucial part of your research. So we're winding down. I got a letter from Rick January 3rd, 1990. At the same time, I have tackled the Britzman papers, and I'm getting them placed in archivally sound folders and containers. They will be ready for your perusal in 3 or 4 weeks. I would like to suggest that you come down here sometime soon for a planning visit. It would be good for us to get together and look at the Britzman material. Last bit. I wrote Rick, February 13th, 1990. I had now visited the collection at the Amon Carter. I'm slowly sorting through my materials that I accumulated during the week, eagerly awaiting the finder's guide and already planning my next trip. You were dead right about the Britzman collection. It makes working on Russell worthwhile again for a jaded old Russellite like me. We can never hope to replace good medicine in the hearts of Russell fans, but this will be the best Russell letters book ever attempted, bar none. And then finally to the museum. I wrote on February 13th, 1990, Dear Rick, after a week of working with the Britzman collection, I want to second what you already told me. It is simply sensational. It is impossible to overstate the importance of this collection to Russell scholarship. Simply, it revolutionizes our entire understanding of Russell's career, tells us in detail how he became an established artist, fully reveals the importance of Nancy Russell's contribution to what was a successful business partnership as well as a successful marriage. It offers countless insights into Russell the man through letters of reminiscence and through some of his own exchanges. It is the starting point for any serious biography. No Russell catalog in the future can afford to neglect the information it provides about the production and distribution of bronzes and the provenance of paintings. The body of Russell-related photographs is unparalleled, and for my purposes, the drafts of Russell's letters and the detailed records of his published writings, notably the compilation of Good Medicine, make possible for the first time a truly comprehensive scholarly edition of his letters. Obtaining access to the Britzman collection is a great coup, and helping to conserve it a lasting contribution to Western art scholarship. I congratulate you. That's the story of the Britzman collection as we lived it now a quarter of a century ago. I don't know how accessible it is to the public today at the Gilcrease, and I assume it is accessible for any scholar with a legitimate research purpose, but portions of it are being digitized. And as a consequence, this absolutely irreplaceably valuable source from Charles M. Russell should be accessible to any of you who wish to consult it. So, the Britzman Collection.